Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the 2023 New Jersey International Film Festival Filmmaker Q&A session. Today we have Michel Negroponte. He is the director of the wonderful new documentary entitled Herd that we will be screening at our festival on June 3rd. There will be a way to watch it online for 24 hours on that day. And there will also be an in-person screening at 5 p.m. in the afternoon. And so we hope you will join us. If you'd like further information, at the very end of this Q&A, I will share screen and show you how you can purchase tickets. But if you need to know quick and dirty how to get access to that information, you go to njfilmfest.com, all one word, click on where it says current events, which will basically just bounce you one slide down, and then click the red button where it says 2023 New Jersey International Film Festival, and that'll bring you to our Eventive website, which is our streaming provider. And when you purchase a ticket, that is good for in-person as well as online. And in fact, we had a number of patrons over the last few seasons who have watched the film during the day and then came and watched it again on our big screen and were able to interact with the filmmaker. And Michel will be at the screening and he will do a Q&A with the audience afterward. We also have Jesse Einhorn here, who is one of the festival judges, and he's going to be here to help me ask questions of Michel. So welcome, you guys. Welcome.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
So, Michel, I get to ask the first question since I'm the boss, and I love your films. We've been showing your films since way back in the 90s, and I always love your work. And this one was very special to me because I love animals, and I get the sense that you do too, because these Belted Galloway cattle or cows moved in next door to you in the Catskills, and you decided to make a film. Is that how it worked out? I mean, you just also were entranced by them?
Oh, it basically worked out just like that. I heard that the cows were going to be delivered to this neighboring field. I went down and was there when they arrived, and I filmed it, but without really any notion of what that might develop into. I went back, I think, and visited the next day. I was so entranced. I think they're incredibly beautiful animals. And that really initiated an obsession. I was going not necessarily every day, but very, very often, and began this project about the Belted Galloways, my new neighbors.
Yeah, they're right behind me. I took a slide from your press materials, and I've been doing that, and I didn't do that for the very first Zoom Q&As I did with some of the filmmakers. I thought this is better, and you can now see what they look like. If you kind of look behind me, you can see that they have these white bands around their bellies, and they're really quite beautiful. And you also, it kind of seems as if, you know, you got to see the entire process of how a calf comes into being. And in fact, I think there's a relationship that you developed with the very first calf that is born while you were filming. And I think, you know, it seems as if you two guys, there was some kind of chemistry between you two. Is that true, or am I making stuff up?
No, you're not making that up at all. I was particularly intrigued with that calf. And she really initiated the entire process. She has a tremendous amount of character. It took me a while to be able to develop, let's say, a more intimate relationship with her because they're very shy. Nonetheless, I thought she was stunning, and she really was kind of my tour guide into the entire herd. So yes, it really did begin with the birth of that particular calf.
Cool. Jesse, would you like to ask a question?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I got to review a couple of films, definitely my favorite of the bunch. So I know when you, in the film, you include a lot of sort of references to historical material, whether it's film of Nazi Germany or of historical figures like Gandhi and all that. So how did that sort of come to form, where you sort of figured out did you figure out which matched with certain footage or afterwards, or were you thinking about it while you were filming? I was just sort of interested how that came to be.
Well, it was kind of a combination of all of the above, but when I first met that little calf at the beginning of the film, I remember this idea just popped into my head, And I said, gosh, this just reminds me of Ferdinand the Bull. And it was just a random thought, that arrived to me. And I went back to my cutting room and did some experimentation. Well, first of all, I looked up Ferdinand the Bull, which I had been, my father read to me when I was a child. And I realized I didn't know really that much about it. I knew it was an older children's book. And then I discovered it was written just before the beginning of the Spanish Civil War and subsequently before the World War II. And I never had realized how controversial a book it was. I mean, it was mind-boggling to me that Hitler actually read the book and despised the book. So, for me, it's kind of a process of discovery. This thought sort of pops into my head. I did some reading, and then I try to encapsulate that discovery as best I can in the movie with black and white footage generally, or what I call the archival sections. And I continue to do that throughout the entire film. So it really is sort of stream of consciousness. I'm trying to give you a sense of what it was like to be there with the cows and some of the ideas that I began to consider while I was filming. So yes, that's really the way it developed, but it was totally organic. It started in one place and the movie ended somewhere else. And, I don't plan these things out. I just allow them to evolve.
Very cool. Was it a conscious decision not to have a voiceover narration and to use kind of intertitle cards to generate information?
Well, as you know, I have narrated a number of my films, and I just felt that I wanted to try something different. And I thought the title cards worked well. There are some people who say I should have narrated the film, but yeah, next time. But the other thing is that in the process of making the film, I seem to be going back to the silent film era quite a bit. And I do that specifically in the movie with obviously Buster Keaton. And so I like the idea of titles. It gives it, it kind of enhances the idea that it's a film without words and, well, without dialogue, I should say specifically. And so it's really the music, the actions, the photography that really tell the story. And so I thought that was in keeping with my interest in the silent film era.
But it's a very personal kind of narration through these slides that we see, with you talking about your own personal history, as well as some of the history about Hitler and Gandhi and some of the other figures that we see in the film. So I actually think it works, because in Jesse and his review, which I reread, hasn't been published yet, but he talks about how there is silence. There is not that much music, I think, when we see the cows, but the music is seen for the archival stuff. And I think, was that also very conscious?
Well, there actually is music with the cows, but it tends to be pretty gentle and meditative, and you may just not pick up on it as much. Archival sections, in particular, the archival sections in which humans are behaving very, very badly with animals and cows specifically, there is a very abrasive soundtrack that kind of highlights the aggression. One of the concepts that I was playing with is that I had this feeling, and this is a slight exaggeration, that over time, cows have evolved and humans have devolved. And I use the black and white sections to kind of underline that notion, that idea. Yes.
Yeah, it's very subtle, and I think it works. It's very effective. I mean, when we do see the cows, we see them from fall, then through the winter, as you can see behind me, through many snowstorms. That was one of my questions. How many snowstorms did you have to film through?
Oh my.
and how
Yeah.
many and how long was the process. But we do eventually get to spring, so I think there is a kind of linearity that follows the life cycle, which I really like, that also underpins the film. So, but Jesse, please, your turn.
Yeah, so that was definitely something I touched on in the review, was the use of music, and I found it interesting how whenever the cows were shown, it was sort of like a necessary, like a neutral or an apolitical music, and then when things were shown in the archival footage, like especially when the buffalo were shown, there was, they Home on the Range was played, and I felt like that was very specific use of music. It sort of like had sort of a side to it, especially like during Nazi Germany, the German music was played, and I feel like that the music was definitely used to enforce definitely what was going on, and the cows were sort of more of a neutral stance, and I feel like that was definitely interesting. I enjoyed that a lot.
It's an interesting observation. I clearly wanted to give the archival section an edge by using music that was at times abrasive or whatever. So yes, I think I agree with you.
I wanted to ask you also about um well, I guess the length of the film. Was it one cycle, or did you film over a course of years to make the film?
No, it's one cycle. It's really starts in roughly the month of August, and then I think I went into a full year, and then maybe a little bit longer. I can't remember exactly. The last scene where the new bull arrives might have been a little bit past. I mean, that was in the fall, so it was shot roughly over a period of a year and a half, maybe a little bit less, and it is chronological.
It is.
I thought that that was actually kind of important to the story, simply because, as you know, the herd expands. I wanted people to get a sense of, how these calves turn into heifers, young cows quite quickly,
Mm.
and the way they mature, the way they interact with one another, and also the seasonal changes. I mean, I mentioned this is a very unusual breed of cows. And not only are they exceptionally beautiful, somebody said to me that they're designer cows. They do kind of look like some Yves Saint Laurent came along and designed
A cow.
their coats. But they're also incredibly hardy, and they live outdoors all the time. And they're known to be incredibly strong and hardy and weatherproof. I was quite surprised. And the other thing is that's kind of important to the story is that they birth quite easily, and they rarely, if ever, need any kind of human reinforcement, human help with the birthing process. We're kind of accustomed to seeing dairy cows, and dairy cows actually have a lot of human interface. They're milked, once a day. People are around them all the time. These are beef cattle, and they have far less human intersection. So they really are loners. I mean, they're out there in the wild, and they do what they do, and they obviously do it beautifully well.
So my question also is, there is one bull that we see, and he fathers all of these calves, and then he is taken away. So it becomes a herd of females minus the calves that are male or female,
Right,
correct?
right. That's correct.
And then are these cows then brought to slaughter? I mean,
No,
okay,
no. I mean,
how does
look,
it work?
no. Well, this is primarily a breeding operation, and the people who own the cows, they live in New Jersey.
Oh,
They don't live up here, and they're doing this as an experiment. They're doing this farming project for fun, and they don't need to slaughter these animals.
that's
I think when the cows get older, some of them will be culled just because that's the humane thing to do. But for the time being, and also, well, they need any herd needs to have really one primary bull. And so when Buford, the bull that is in the first half of the film,
Right.
is beginning to try to mate with his daughters, then you send the bull away. And then at the end, a new bull was introduced to the herd. It just took some time to find the new bull. That may have happened. I mean, under different circumstances, that transition may have happened much more rapidly. But no, now there is a new bull, and there are actually at the moment two bulls. One of them is actually a steer, and I don't know if I need to explain that, but well, the poor little bull gets castrated,
Right.
and so he can coexist with the one main bull. If you have too many bulls, you're going to have a lot of problems.
Yes.
Frankly, having one bull was hard enough for me because Buford didn't particularly like me, and um, and I did have to dodge him on a number of occasions. I did feel like I was in a Buster Keaton film on occasion, and so that thought popped into my head, and I said, "Well, look at this. I've never seen this movie by Buster Keaton called Go West. It's actually was lost for many years." And it was recently um, found and improved and uh, reprinted and all of that. And I used it. I used a good hefty section of it. I think it's a great comedic relief. Buster Keaton can do things that I cannot do. But I found it a highly appropriate addition to the film and a wonderful comedic moment.
Yeah, it is really wonderful. Jesse, go ahead. We have
So
time for a couple more questions.
yeah, so something I was definitely just interested about, I don't know if this is true or not, but in a couple shots you can see you filming, like the shadow of you filming next to the cow. And I thought that was sort of interesting because I didn't know if whether that was intentional or not, but I feel like it sort of projected like humanity's sort of dominance over the cows over the years, and it sort of helped to show that. And I thought that was definitely interesting. Whether that was the point or not, I don't know, but I just noticed that was sort of like an interesting projection over sort of the filming, and it was a nice touch, definitely.
Well, no, it was definitely intentional. And the reason it was intentional is that I wanted to underscore the idea that this is a personal essay and that really the film is authored, and it's authored by somebody specifically. And it's you see my shadow and it's me. I didn't really think of it as dominance. I thought of it more as a reminder to viewers that somebody is actually making this film, and you can see me on occasion in shadows. And I thought there was also one shot in particular where my shadow is projected on the coat of one of the cows, and then as the cow moves away, my shadow gets projected on the field in the background. And I love that transition. So those little visual moments were, I thought, special. I mean, obviously, not every shot in the film has my shadow, but it's on occasion, and when it seemed appropriate, I kept it or used it.
Yeah, I definitely like how it was sort of like an occasional reminder throughout. I definitely felt that, and I definitely liked that shot for sure. And it sort of felt like you were sort of like waiting there, sort of like, and you get, the audience gets to see that after and sort of gets to ponder on it for a second. I like that for sure.
Right. It was also a bit of a surprise. I mean, I saw
Yeah.
my shadow, and then when the cow moved, I was quite enchanted by the way my shadow moved with the cow in a different way.
It's
But
it's one of those.
I can remember that moment so clearly because it's a subtle moment, it's a small moment, but the film really is a collection of small moments. And maybe there's only one big moment, and I would say that's the birth of the calf near the end of the film, which was incredibly dramatic, I thought.
I mean, standing up, it's crazy. Watching it, it's just amazing. It's amazing image, amazing sweet sequence. But I did want to ask you about another stylistic moment where there are a number of fade outs and fade ins. And was that consciously done to show a passing of time, or to kind of create these informal chapter stops? Or I was just curious of that.
That's interesting. You know, I'm an older filmmaker, and in the old days, we used fades quite often. And I like fades. I think that it's like the end of a paragraph and the beginning of a new paragraph, some degree of separation. It allows the audience to just take a step back and then go back into the movie. So I've always liked fades. And it's a stylistic choice. I think today, younger filmmakers rarely use fades. And when I'm working with students, I sometimes go, why don't you use a fade there? And they look at me as if I'm an old fart or something. It just isn't part of their cinematic language. So, I mean, again, I like them, and I think it's part of the rhythm and the pacing, and it's also, it does emphasize the passage of time.
We have time for one more question, Jesse, if you have one.
Yeah. So I was interested. My favorite historical comparison, I think, was the one between between Hitler and Gandhi, and I felt like that was very interesting because it felt like it was two very different sides of sort of the bar there. How Hitler didn't even care about people, and then you have Gandhi who views cows as these sacred animals, and I feel like that was definitely a nice sort of way to think about it. You're given these two very opposing views, and then you have sort of the cows in the center, and it sort of makes you to force you to make a decision about that. So what was sort of your thought when it came to what people were going to walk away with at the end of the film? Like what were they left thinking about?
Well, I think that there's several references to this kind of black and white comparison. Hitler and Gandhi are certainly an extreme example of that
Yeah.
in the movie. There's also Pythagoras, the Greek mathematician, and Aristotle, one of his more or less contemporaries, who thought very, very differently about animals. Pythagoras believed that the soul of animals was transferred into humans, and therefore he could not eat animals or a cow because he felt that there was a human being embedded within the spirit of the animal. So, I mean, I think that this is a dialogue that has gone on for obviously hundreds and hundreds of years, and it's fundamentally about animal personhood. We humans have such a strange relationship to animals. There are pets, we love them, we adore them, and then we go to a restaurant and order a steak dinner. I mean, it really doesn't make a lot of sense. And a lot of things that we as humans do doesn't make a lot of sense. And so I'm not trying to put a very heavy political stamp on top of this. But I'm just asking people to think and to consider what they're doing the next time they order a steak at a restaurant. Do they have a notion of what they're eating? And for that matter, would they eat their dog? Would they eat their cat? I doubt it. So again, there are paradoxes that I'm trying to, highlight in the film, and but I'm trying to do it gently.
You do a masterful job, Michel. Every single film we've ever shown of yours has been wonderful. And when I saw that you were going to show this film in Greece at the Thalassinos, I can't pronounce it. You'll do it.
Thessaloniki.
Thessaloniki, yes. My nephew was just there studying, and he said it's the art capital of Greece, and he knew all about the film festival. So I said, well, let me just reach out to Michel and tell him to submit it to us. And it was, universally praised by our judges, and we're very proud to be screening it at our festival. I mean, it's one of the highlights. And I'd like to show you guys now how to be able to purchase tickets. So I'd like to share screen for a second. And normally folks would go to our website. Oh, you don't want to see that one. You want to see that one. And you see njfilmfest.com. That's our home. Normally everything would be here. But since the pandemic, we've now moved our festival website to Eventive, who has been our streaming provider for the last 3 years. They actually saved us because we went exclusively online for the first year and a half during the pandemic. And so we've stayed there. It seems to work. And this is our normal website. This is actually the screening space, which is the picture behind the lettering. That's Voorhees Hall. That's where we'll be holding the in-person screenings. And all you need to do once you get to our homepage is click on current events, and it'll bounce you to basic information about the festival, when it's taking place, June 2nd to the 11th on weekends. And then you need to click on the buy tickets to get more information, and that will bounce you to our Eventive website, which this is our welcome page, which is kind of vanilla, but it provides you with, again, with general information, our sponsors, how to get to the live screenings, how to register for free parking, et cetera, et cetera. So once you've gotten here, you've got 4 buttons to click. If you'd like to get an all access pass, you can do that by clicking on this one. It's $100. It's basically the films are half price. And so we are showing 35 films out of 711 entries that we received around the world. So we'll be showing 35 films spread out over 11 programs. 9 of them have the in-person and online component. And you can find our schedule page, which is very linear, old-fashioned way, where you just scroll down and you can read about all the films. And they're separated by these red lines, which are basically the days and times when they're screening. You go to the tickets page, that's our catalog page, which lists all the individual screenings. And if I hover over Saturday, June 3rd, you can get more information about Michel's film, and you can also order tickets by clicking pre-order now. You'll have to register one time just so they have your email information. And then once you do that, you can buy tickets to any or all the shows. So you can go that way to check out our program. Back to Festival site always brings you back to this page. And you can go to the film guide, which gives you individual descriptions of the films themselves. And here's the nice poster for Herd. You click on that, you get more information about the film itself here. And then you go one more space. I guess that's basically it. Back to the tickets page. That's where you buy the tickets, and basic information about the festival is here as well. I'm going to stop sharing. You can only really buy one ticket at a time. It's kind of a pain because some people want to buy bulk tickets to share with other people, and you can do that. But because we're using Eventive and you're getting an online screening as part of the price of admission, that we need individual emails, and that's why it's done that way. But I want to thank Michel for joining us for the last half hour. It was always nice to see you, and I look forward to seeing you again in a couple of weeks. And thank you, Jesse, also. And I will see you in a couple of weeks as well, too.
Yep.
And thank you so much for hanging out with us, you guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to stop recording.